Okay. Mhm. Well, you can easily see I am not Rev Dan. I am Kay Azar and will be your guide and worship associate today. Our minister, Dan Lambert, will be out of the pulpit for the rest of this month, and Reverend Kathy Schmitz will be gracing us with her time during this month. You'll have a chance to meet her and get to hear her speak later in the service. Our progressive, welcoming, inclusive, and judgment-free congregation is a liberal religious community of diverse and free-thinking individuals. UUFC is a spiritual community where reason and social justice matter as people who learn, love, share, and serve together. We welcome all into our family. We begin our service each week by singing an invitation to gather together, even as we are scattered in many different places. Let's sing, enter, rejoice, and zoom in. I ask everybody to wait to light your own chalice at home until after the affirmation. Our chalice lighting this morning is from the Promise and Practice Chalice Lighting number 2 by Adrian L.H. Graham, who is a member of the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore. He describes himself as a evangelist, and he has served as Director of Communication and Membership at the Unitarian Church of Rockville. We kindle a flame of power, illuminating the holy in each of our faces. We recognize in the flame a passionate commitment to our shared faith. We are held and carried from day to day, week to week in the shining of this light. This flame is mine as well as yours. We are brought together on this day, called to growth, to expansion within its glow. What does your heart know while beholding this holy fire? Please light your chalice at home. Join me in the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. Our opening words this morning are amended from a litany for those not ready for healing by Reverend Yolanda Pierce, the Dean of the Howard University School of Divinity and Professor of Religion and Literature and Womanist Theology. Let us not rush to the language of healing before understanding the fullness of the injury and the depth of the wound. Let us not rush to offer a Band-Aid when the gaping wound requires surgery and complete reconstruction. Let us not offer false equivalencies, thereby diminishing the particular pain being felt in a particular circumstances in a particular historical moment. Let us not speak of reconciliation without speaking of reparations and restoration, or how we can repair the breach and how we can restore the loss. Let us not rush past the loss of this mother's child, this father's child, someone's beloved son. Let us not value property over people. Let us not protect material objects while human lives hang in the balance. Let us not value a false peace over a righteous justice. Let us not be afraid to sit with the ugliness, the messiness, and the pain that is life and community together. Let us not offer cliches to the grieving, those whose hearts are being torn asunder. Instead, let us weep at a criminal justice system which is neither blind nor just. Let us call for the mourning men and the wailing women, those willing to rend their garments of privilege and ease and sit in the ashes of this nation's original sin. Let us be silent when we don't know what to say. Let us be humble and listen to the pain, rage, and grief pouring from the lips of our neighbors and friends. Let us decrease so that our brothers and sisters who live on the underside of history may increase. Let us pray with our eyes open and our feet firmly planted on the ground. Let us listen to the shattering glass, and let us smell the purifying fires, for it is the language of the unheard. A prayer. Loving Spirit, in your mercy, show me my own complicity in injustice. Convict me for my indifference. Forgive me when I have remained silent. Equip me with a zeal for righteousness. Never let me grow accustomed or acclimated to unrighteousness. Amen. I would like to take this time to welcome anybody who is new to us or visiting. We'd like you to say hi in the chat. Give us your name, where you are, and how you found us. If you are willing to do so, we would love to hear from you. During that time, we're going to have a hymn, Lean on Me.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you are strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to follow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Lean on me when you're strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on.
I think that song is perfect for this morning. I would invite you all to settle back into quiet during this time. Our virtual book of life is now our chat. Use that, and please tell us what it is that's important in your life right now. Before we begin our meditation, I want to tell everybody that Lori and Jackie's grandson was killed in Arizona this past week. It has been devastating for them and the whole family. We are holding them in our hearts. Please take a moment. I'll bring you back with the gong. We'll now have the hymn Spirit of Life. I'd like to make a reminder to folks that while we're not here in person and can't pass the basket for an offering, that there are still ways. You can use the app Venmo or good old-fashioned check or cash in the mail or in the mailbox here at the fellowship. I'd like to extend a welcome and an introduction to Reverend Kathy Schmitz. She's an ordained UU minister, ordained in 1999, and has served congregations in Massachusetts, Texas, Miami, and Orlando as both settled and an interim parish minister. Most recently, she served as the senior minister of First Unitarian Church in Orlando for over 8 years, which spanned the time of the Pulse murders. Reverend Grandma Kathy has spent the year in Atlanta helping the COVID-related school disruption of her grandchildren. What a lucky job. She has a Master's of Divinity from Andover Newton Theological School and a bachelor's degree in computer science from Cornell University's College of Engineering. She is the board chair of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida. Reverend Kathy Schmitz.
Unmute. Good morning. I am so happy to be with you today, and thank you for having me. Since I will be with you for 3 weeks, please allow me to provide a little context for my presence among you. I was scheduled to speak later this month. Last Sunday, Reverend Dan asked me if I could move my visit up. As we talked, I realized how in need of a break he was. He told me some of what was going on in the congregation, and I realized how much some of you needed a break as well. At my suggestion, he, your President Lori, and I came up with a plan for me to cover the next 3 weeks, with my role to hold some space, to preach covenant and healthy community, to listen, and maybe to ask a few good questions as appropriate. I can tell you that pandemic ministry is wearing on many of our ministers, and congregations are feeling the weight of holding it all together on Zoom for over a year. You are not alone. You are not the only community where things might have been handled differently, but have taken on a life of their own instead. Now, I'm aware that some of you aren't really sure about what's going on, so in an attempt at transparently, let me give a quick overview of what I see from my limited and still evolving perspective. Folks are in a number of different places on the presenting issues. Some folks are pretty excited after hearing that the minister would run for public office. Some folks are upset after hearing that the minister would run for public office. Some folks are upset with the folks who are upset. Some folks are blissfully unaware of all of this. And then there are folks whose heads are just spinning as they try to understand. There are, of course, layers and complications, some history and personalities. After all, you are a group of humans. My hope for you is that you can take a breath and remember that these are difficult times. There are some fabulous, deep, and meaningful conversations that you can choose to have with each other. I have no opinion on what the outcome of those conversations should be, truly. I have a lot of opinions about how crucial it is that you take the time to have them. It is important spiritual work. To support this work, after the service today, we'll forego the usual breakout groups. Instead, some members will share their experience attending a UU Covenant workshop yesterday, and we will conclude with a guided meditation led by Jackie McDaniel. With all that in mind, I brought you a sermon that I wrote in February when a congregation requested that I speak on beloved community. I was thinking about the larger divide in our country after the national events of January, but I used as an example my own experiences in a small congregation learning to handle conflict. I titled it, Choosing Your Aftermath, based on the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he said in 1957, there are certain things that we can say about this method that seeks justice without violence. It does not seek to defeat or humiliate the opponent, but to win friendship and understanding. The ultimate end of violence is to defeat the opponent. The ultimate end of nonviolence is to win the friendship of the opponent. And so, the aftermath of violence is bitterness. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community. The aftermath of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. This method that seeks to transform and to redeem and win the friendship of the opponent makes it possible to live together in community and not continually with bitterness and friction. End quote. My thoughts are also inspired by the words of Carter Haywood, a feminist theologian and one of the first 11 women ordained as Episcopal priests. She wrote, "Love is not fundamentally a sweet feeling, not at heart a matter of sentiment, attachment, or being drawn toward. Love is active, effective, a matter of making reciprocal and mutually beneficial relation with one's friends and enemies. Love creates righteousness or justice here on earth. To make love is to make justice. As advocates and activists for justice know, loving involves struggle, resistance, and risk. Let us begin. Lamar Glover is an adjunct professor of physics at the California State University. When speaking on the topic of flat earthers, those folks who believe that the earth is not a sphere, but rather a disc or a plane, Glover had this to say. So, every flat earther shouldn't be held in contempt, but serve as a reminder of a scientist that could have been someone who fell through the cracks. And we, as ambassadors of science, are called to do more, right? So scientists of varying degrees of professionalism consider becoming a mentor to someone who is coming from a non-traditional point of entry to the sciences. End quote. Become a mentor. Don't belittle, don't denigrate, don't create resentment and bitterness. Become a mentor. Reach out a hand, invite others in. This may require a change in behavior, our behavior. It may also require a change in attitude, our attitude. Because the thing is, I can't remember a time when I changed my beliefs because somebody put me down. If we want to encourage people in a new way of thinking, we may just have to start by checking our own stuff. We may need to heed the words of Carter Hayward when she said, love is active, effective, a matter of making reciprocal and mutually beneficial relation with one's friends and enemies. If we want to change the world, we may need to change ourselves first. Because I don't just want to invite folks to understand the geometry of planet Earth. I want to invite people to help create a shared vision of what is possible on our precious blue marble. I want to create a world in which our debates are not about the shape of our world, but rather how best to live sustainably on it. I want to create a world in which we are not arguing about whether or not there is systemic injustice, but one in which we are searching together for ever more ways to help justice flourish. I want to create a world in which even life's inevitable conflicts are handled in ways that are constructive and generous and healthy. In other words, I want to be part of creating the beloved community, and I want everyone else to be part of it too. This term, beloved community, was popularized by the Reverend King back in the 1950s and 60s. We throw it around a lot today. I wonder if we all mean the same thing when we say it, understand the same thing when we hear it. The word beloved means to be deeply loved. What would it mean for a community to be deeply loved? I think such a community is the world of our dreams, is heaven here on earth, is that elusive thing that we believe just might be possible. It is the North Star on which we set our gaze, even though we will never arrive. Beloved community is our imagination's vision of what is possible. It is a vision that we deeply love. You and I might not share the exact same vision, though I'd guess that our visions are closer to each other than either is to the world we live in today. I'd love it if we could spend our time creating shared visions and working to make them happen. But I've come to realize that some people have very different visions than me. Many years ago, when I lived in the Northeast, a blizzard was coming. So we popped out to get some videos, and I picked one that looked like a B-grade science fiction movie. Partway through the video, it took a turn I did not see coming. I realized that in this film, Secretary General of the United Nations was the Antichrist. And the way that you could tell he was the Antichrist was because he had the goal of world peace. Apparently, that was what the Antichrist wanted. And I was, what? This was my first exposure to the Left Behind series of books and movies, novels about a possible end time from an apocalyptic Christian point of view. They did not want world peace. More than that, it was the first time in my optimistic life that I realized that some people really didn't want the same thing as me, didn't share a remotely similar vision to the world as it could be. It was disorienting. I am no longer so naive, although I haven't given up on being an optimist just yet. About 4 years ago, I changed my Facebook banner. And ever since then, it has read, Unity. It means all of us. I was thinking about unity back then, and I'm thinking about it now. And I think it's an important part of any conversation about beloved community. What I meant when I first put it up was, if you want unity, then there must be inclusion and justice for all. Immigrants, Blacks, Indigenous people, people of color, members of the LGBTQ plus community, and people living with disabilities, and women, and more. Everyone. What I mean now is a little different. If we want unity, we will have to find a way to include everyone, even those folks who don't yet want to include the other folks. What a hassle, right? Heck, can't these people just go away? The thing is, they probably aren't going to go away. We have to share a planet with them, whatever shape it is. We can silence them and take away their power. I certainly think we should avoid letting them drive the bus. But we don't need to belittle or disparage them. We don't need to create unnecessary bitterness or resentment. This doesn't mean we negotiate with terrorists. It doesn't mean we compromise with racists or homophobes or sexists. It does mean we keep the end goal in sight, the ever-evolving vision of the world as it could be and should be. It does mean that we're going to be willing to say over and over again in all sorts of ways, we're going this way. We invite you to come along. We need to mentor. We need to practice love. Love is described by Carter Hayward that is active, effective, a matter of making reciprocal and mutually beneficial relation with one's friends and enemies. We need to be nonviolent, not just physically, but also psychologically and spiritually. We need to hold out the possibility that redemption and reconciliation are possible. With our universalist forebears, we need to believe that all people can be saved. For me, that means that they can be brought back into right relationship. I'm not saying that this is easy. I am saying that it is the work to which we are called. In the earlier King quote, we hear, so the aftermath of violence is bitterness. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of beloved community. The aftermath of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. This is the method that seeks to transform and redeem and win the friendship of the opponent and make it possible to live together in community and not continually live in bitterness and friction. So it is up to us to choose the aftermath with which we wish to live. It is up to us to choose the aftermath with which we wish to live. The way we will live in beloved community is also the way to beloved community. One way that this change in behavior has been framed in recent years is that rather than calling people out, we need to call them in. Some would say back to covenant. Rather than shame and alienate them, we need to invite them back to healthy relationship. One of the gifts of our Unitarian Universalist congregations is that our covenanted communities can be places where we practice behaviors, the kinds of behaviors we want to see and use out in the world. So to make this grand goal of creating beloved community by way of world peace a little easier to relate to, I'd like to share a few stories from the very first congregation I served, because while the context is more contained, the principles are the same. So I had been at the congregation about 6 years when I was about to head out on a sabbatical. The congregation had had some significant conflict before I arrived, and we'd been working to learn new ways to be community. Days before I left for my sabbatical, someone blurted out in a panic, "What if we have a conflict while you're gone?" I realized that I was getting more than my fair share of credit for their improved state. They were the ones who had been willing to learn and to change. I knew they could do it, but they didn't. I felt like I was Dumbo's magic feather. They thought they needed me, but they didn't. I said, if a conflict comes up, just ask yourselves, what is the next right thing? What will help get us back to health? And that's what they did, and I had a wonderful sabbatical. It was in that congregation, though, that I developed my conviction that we, as Unitarian Universalists, have an obligation to create healthy communities within our congregations. Over the years, I've encountered many people who had trouble playing well with others. They may have had, and often did, have other fine qualities. Still, their community-breaking behaviors were problematic. What I learned was that if the community itself were strong and healthy, challenging people could be involved and the community could prevent harm. Two more stories from earlier in my time at that congregation that was learning so much. A couple of years into my time there, a person with a very strong personality and many gifts was causing so much trouble that the board decided to remove him from membership and bar him from campus. It was heart-wrenching. The congregation was alarmed. Unitarian Universalists accept everyone, don't they? A congregational meeting was held and the decision explored. Always there's a balance between the individual and the community. We accept all people, but not all behavior. In the end, the congregation understood, thanked the board for its leadership, and asked that processes be put in place to prevent things from getting to this point again. It was a turning point for this congregation. They now knew that they could take the steps to keep their congregation safe and healthy. They could expect accountability, and they committed to continue to grow. It may have been the turning point for the individual as well. Last I heard, he had started attending another UU congregation that was bigger and more used to dealing with challenging behavior. They had policies and procedures in place to manage this person's more problematic behaviors. And last I knew, he was a successful member. If we are healthy as congregations, we can include people who sometimes find it hard to be included. Another story that exemplified the growing health of that congregation. Their previous minister of 10 years had had a negotiated resignation. You could say that she resigned under pressure, just short of being fired. The congregation had done a lot of work to recover from the conflict and controversy that surrounded that departure. Within my first month on the job, I found myself on the phone with Richard. Richard had been a key player in the controversy that ended that previous ministry. Richard was one of those people with abundant energy who does lots of good stuff and is also a pain in the neck. I was explaining to Richard that people were upset by how he was running a committee he was chairing. He could not hear my input. He resigned not only as chair, but from the committee. He stopped attending congregational events. For the next 2 years, I would ask his friends how he was doing, but there was little more I could do. During the time that Richard was away, I learned more about the conflict before I arrived. One person had this to say about it. The minister made some mistakes, but we, the leaders, did a lot wrong too. I wish we had been more skilled in how to handle a difficult situation. Over the years, the congregation worked hard to develop its skill and learned how to handle behavior that was not helpful to the community. Eventually, Richard started coming around again, but the congregation he re-entered was not the same one he had stormed out of. They had learned a lot and grown plenty. At the beginning of my 6th year with that congregation, in a membership committee, Richard began to make over-the-top comments about the congregation as a whole. I called him out on his behavior. He did not like it. I wish I had called him in. But it's what happened next that is noteworthy. Over the next week, Richard went around the congregation to official leaders and also to people who held informal power. He told them I was bad. He told them I shouldn't be allowed to have my sabbatical. He told them they should get rid of me. For the congregation, it was déjà vu all over again. Except for one thing. It was not the same congregation it had been the last time Richard had tried to get rid of a minister. To a person, they said, "Well, Richard, what did Reverend Kathy say when you sat down and talked to her about this?" He had no reply, and they didn't listen to any more of his complaints. If he wanted to address his concerns, he needed to address them to the person he was concerned with, in this case, me. Within a week, Richard stopped his destructive behavior. I continued my ministry in the congregation. I took my sabbatical. 2 years later, I left to pursue professional and personal adventure. It was the first ministerial departure without controversy that the congregation had experienced in 50 years. Now, I'm proud of this story. You might think I'm proud because I survived an attack by someone who had a history of destroying ministries. That's not why I'm proud. I'm proud because Richard survived. Richard survived not because of anything I did, but because of what the congregation and its leaders did. They responded to destructive behavior with healthy behavior. In doing so, they not only prevented another abrupt ministerial departure, they also helped control Richard's behavior when he did not. They refused to let him do harm, and they still loved him. Some people think that the way to deal with destructive behavior is to get rid of the people exhibiting the behavior. While this may be necessary in extreme cases, it is almost always best to deal with the destructive behavior by challenging the behavior itself. We can say to people in our congregations, in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, and our government, in our world, we're going this way. We think it is the way to unity, to beloved community, to a peaceful, just, and sustainable world for all. We practice this in our covenantal tradition, where we are brought together not by shared beliefs about the cosmos, but by shared ideas about how to be together in community. We have the opportunity to be intentional about building health in our communities and taking our learning out into the world to continue learning from each other and those around us to deepen our understanding and widen our perspective. In this way, the elusive world that we dream of, that heaven on earth, that beloved community, can shine just a little bit brighter in our lives and in our world. Amen, and blessed be.
Thank you so much, Reverend Kathy. We are blessed to have had you with us this morning. Thank you again. Now for the life of our community, because it does continue regardless of COVID. Immediately after the service, a number of members who attended a covenant workshop presented by the UUA yesterday will be providing a short introduction to the workshop and information that they gleaned from that. Please stick around for it. Immediately after that, our COVID coordinator, Jackie McDaniel, will lead us in a short guided meditation. And this will all happen before the Social Justice Committee meeting at noon. From Betty Barriga, artists in the United States and Mexico created the 45,000 quilt project to start a conversation about human rights crisis caused by, on the average, the daily imprisonment of 45,000 people in for-profit detention centers by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The quilt will be on display at the Visual Arts Center in Punta Gorda, April 16th, 17th, and 18th, daily, those days between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. On Thursday at 4:30, there will be a Zoom meeting of the anti-racism team. This meeting is open to anybody interested in continuing the work of the fellowship in its anti-racism efforts. The Zoom link will be in the weekly update on Thursday or on the calendar. We will now extinguish the chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May those ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we can be together again. We will now go now in peace, followed by the benediction.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
And before I do the benediction, I would just like to say thank you to Linda Hines, James Boyle, and the choir and choir for all the fabulous music that we use every Sunday and can actually be heard on the YouTube channel. So this is Beatitudes for Justice Builders by Reverend Lindy Ramsden, the founding executive director and senior minister of the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry of California. Blessed are you who question your own assumptions and listen with an open mind. You will receive new insights beyond your imagining. Blessed are you who suffer the attacks of others to stand up for what is right. You will not be alone, for your courage will inspire others to rise. Blessed are you who build friendships as well as justice. Even when you lose an issue, you will have strengthened the foundation of your community. Blessed are you who take delight in people. You will not be bored at meetings. Blessed are you who agitate the placid waters of complacency. You will create waves in the inertia of privilege and will know the thrill of riding the surf of change. Blessed are you who play as well as work. You will have more fun, build more energy, and will draw the powers of the impish to your cause. Blessed are you who ask for help in your role as leaders. You will find teachers at every turn, and your work will remain interesting and alive. Blessed are you who, when wrongfully attacked, find safe outlets for your righteous rage. Your mind will be clear, your decisions strategic, and your progress will not be derailed by the backlash of the fearful. Blessed are you who do not demonize your opponents. Your eyes and your hearts will be open. Blessed are you who sing and dance. You will find energy and joy to lift you on your journey. Blessed are you who offer thanks and praise fivefold for every critique. Your children will want to visit you after they are grown. People will want to serve on your committees, and friends will be interested in your opinions. Blessed are you who study the rhythms of history. You will have knowledge with which to shape the future. Blessed are you who work in coalition rather than in principled isolation. You will meet great people who learn things you didn't realize you needed to know, and have partners for the journey when you are in the lead or in need. Blessed are you who can change your mind. You are still alive. Blessed are you who will not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You will see progress in your lifetime. Blessed are you with an active spiritual life. You will find perspective and comfort in times of loss and betrayal, and will rise without cynicism to meet the challenges of a new day. Blessed are you who live from a place of gratitude. You will know the meaning of life. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And now we will have some members of the group who went to the Covenant workshop yesterday. And I believe that is Ted Zawistowski,